So let's roll. Hi and welcome everyone to what I would call the very first real episode of Storykit Talks Live. We did, as some of you might know, 3 episodes in May and June just to try it out, but now it feels like we're rolling for real. This is a live event, or we can call it a webinar, or we can call it a circus if we want to. But this is where we talk about a lot of things, but the very core subject that we want to talk about every time is storytelling. And since Storykit is the complete video creator, we will, of course, talk extensively about video storytelling throughout the season. But the more I've worked with video and social media, the more I've learned that the main challenges for the storyteller is the same, whatever format we're using. I mean, we still have to ask us, who is the audience? What do they want to hear? Which stories can I tell? Where can I find them? How should I tell them? When, where, what are my goals? And so forth. So my name is Jonna Ekman, and I'm a journalist who turned into a marketer, and my title is now Marketing Director at Storykit. And by my side, I have the brilliant Heidi Bodal, who is the... No, that's not you.
No!
The brilliant Heidi Bodal.
I'm in a totally different place.
Yeah. Community manager at Storykit, who will run the show for us. And with us today, we have the all-knowing Fredrik Strömberg. Now you can wave, Fredrik. Hey. CPO at Storykit and also a true storyteller through and through. We're doing this live with an audience, and you have no idea how much we want you all to join in the discussion. So question, thoughts, opinions, anything, just want to shout out, laugh out loud, just raise your hand or write in the chat, and Heidi will bring you in or read what you have said. But hey, enough of this introduction stuff. It's time to get started with the real subject. So today I'm going to start with a meme. And since we're actually live and on cam, I'm going to show you which meme. But since I'm hoping that people will listen to this, I will tell you all about it. So this is the roller coaster dad, the marketing version of the roller coaster dad. We have a child who is going on a roller coaster and thinks it's really a lot of fun. Whee! And besides, we see the dad who is shocked and afraid and don't know what to do, completely frozen. And in this marketing version of the meme, the happy child is the salespeople creating their own LinkedIn content, and the dad who is in shock is the marketing department trying to stop this from happening at all. And I've seen this meme quite a lot of times on LinkedIn, and it's funny. It's funny because it's true, but it's actually also annoying. Because as a marketer and a communicator, we all know that the days when when all communication would go through the brand team, it's just totally over. We can't do that anymore. Especially on a platform like LinkedIn, I would say that the majority of the successful companies that I follow, they're trying to do the opposite thing. They're trying to let their colleagues run wild and free, but we're still sitting around complaining about how it looks, if it's good enough, and so forth and so forth. And I think that this has to do a lot with processes and tools and knowledge and all of the above. So this is what we're going to talk about, brand safety. I have just recently learned that brand safety in English is something else than what we'd say in Swedish, but staying on brand as a huge company when you're starting to decentralize your communication, and especially in video. So, Fredrik, any thoughts about the meme?
I hadn't seen it since I'm old, so I don't look at memes.
I thought memes
I saw the one that you posted that was manipulated. So I was like, I don't know. I think it holds true for most people. I'm not sure if it's only the marketing department. I think it's sort of an executive or higher up thing in that a lot of sort of organizations have in common that they tend to be kind of afraid for what people are communicating in their name. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah, but why do we need to decentralize content creation or even video creation for that matter?
Well, I think there's a few things to that. First of all, there's always this sort of it's not a trend. It's development. It's like an evolution that you always every type of, call it industrialization or digitization or whatever you call it. Any kind of development brings like tasks that that used to belong to someone else, brings them closer to the responsible person, right? So I mean, there were a time where you needed like 10 people to do every manual chore, and then now you have machines to do it, and the same goes for like anything. We try to tend to want to automate and try to help with technical tools that lets the person who actually owns the task do it themselves rather than delegate it to someone. So I think that's one thing that's happening, that we need to move sort of the production or the task of creating a video to the person who owns the message. I always talk about the person who owns the message, and that's sort of separate from who owns the brand or who thinks they own the message. But because I think that's where you kind of run into a few of these sort of friction areas, is that is someone, I mean, who actually owns, the message. Is it the person who's responsible for creating some kind of effect with what is said, or is there someone higher up who is like the message owner? I think that's a thing that you don't talk about too much in organizations. It's like, stay on brand. Well, what does that mean? So, and because I think that doing things, production, messaging, storytelling, a lot closer to the actual sort of business or the action or the part of the organization that's responsible for something will over time create more effective and efficient content, because it becomes a lot closer to the peer-to-peer thing that people are getting used to and sort of growing up within. So I mean, the internet in and of itself has brought us to a point where we tend to look at a lot of content and trust a lot of people who are not sort of in a position because of their hierarchical status or something, but that they're in a position because we actually trust them. They are our peers in a lot of sense. They sort of walk in our shoes, and they have the same experience and the same kind of issues that we have. So a lot of times that's a trend that that organizations and larger corporations and larger organizations also need to be very wary about, that we are less prone perhaps over time to listen to like big centralized on brand, big messaging, and we want a lot of small messaging. So all of that sort of comes down to it boils down to speed, right? Speed is key. You have to be both proactive and reactive at the same time. You have to be able to act on what's happening here and now, because everything is moving faster. I mean, even if it's something that happens, if it's a news item or whatever that sort of affects your business or organization, that's one thing. But also when you're recruiting people, you have to be faster. You have to sort of talk more often to them, because everything is sort of sped up. And that's not because we are, superior to people 20 years ago. It's just that the tools have made it possible for us to speed up. So speed is key, and speed and sort of centralized big traditional content production, they don't gel too good. That's a huge issue, right? I think everyone has felt the pain of, I want this out. Yeah, sure. It's like one of those quotes from, I can't remember what movie it is. It's like, well, come back 2 weeks ago and I'll have it for you by tomorrow. And it's like, yeah, sure. Yeah. You should have asked like 6 months ago, then it would be done in time. I mean, we've heard from our clients, like, even getting to talk to someone at the studio is like 12 weeks away. It's like, well, I need this out by tomorrow. There's a thing.
Or in 10 minutes.
Yeah, or in 10 minutes. Yeah, sure.
And this is viral now. So I see that, and I also see the whole social media thing, that we just need to publish everywhere and all the time and frequently, and everyone does, because it's such a huge trend on LinkedIn right now, just going out saying everyone in your company should be like a micro influencer for your company and let them do their thing and blah, blah, blah. But still you see these memes, and I'm guessing that's why the reason why we're both wanting our salespeople or HR people or colleagues, whatever colleague, to do things, but still be afraid that it'll look good or be bad, is the reason for that is that we don't have the right processes and we don't have the right tools to really enable people to do things. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think there's additional layers to what that process is. And I think there's additional layers to that discussion, because a lot of times it tends to end up in what can be controlled in documents, right? So if it's off brand, then it doesn't adhere to a specific type of brand document that exists. A lot of times those documents and stuff are not compatible with content creation. In a sense that they are, but they tend to function in a totally different way, right? They function as a negative rather than a positive. So we tend to discuss exactly how big the box should be, and how sort of the radius of the rounded corner and the distance from the canvas edge and things like that. And that has its place. That has sort of there's a utility to that for the people who are sort of almost only the ones who are actually creating that sort of graphic manual. So a lot of times when we talk about brand guidelines and stuff, we talk about sort of graphic manuals.
Yeah.
And then we talk about these things where how do we sort of communicate as a brand on a extremely sort of high level and lofty way. It's like, we should be this and this. This is like tied directly to the vision and the mission of the organization. And there's a huge void between those two things, right? Where we don't talk about processes a lot. And I think that's where there's sort of so much development to do from organizations, because if you see something and that sort of makes you kind of like a bit queasy as a marketing director, as me as a founder, it's like, oh, I don't really like that my sort of colleague has done. A lot of times, I'll rephrase. That is almost never come from sort of a bad place, right? This is the salesperson or your sales development representative or your HR people. They are trying to sort of do what they are put there to do, to reach out, to get more leads, to get more sort of activity around what we're saying. And they have tools in place, they have access to the communication platforms and whatnot. What they very seldom have is like, well, here's a type of story that you can tell. This is a narrative that we tend to tell. So a lot of times when I react to things, it's not like, well, that doesn't look good. It's more like, is that a story we should tell? Is that really like, is that a subject that you know, dressed up in the attire of the organization really should say at this moment? And so it's a lot of times when it blurs the line between sort of personal and professional. That's when I get sort of like, I don't know if that's something we really want to talk about. But the thing is, what's amiss there is like, this person has done this from not a dark place, but a light place, where it's like, I need to communicate more. I need to do something that sort of piques interest. So if that person had more options of what stories to tell, what narratives to sort of communicate, how they should do it, how we do it, not in like, we are this and this and this lofty goal, but more like, you can tell a story that works like this. You can do this. You can pick up this from your organization. You can do this. Tools or no tools to help you do that, just to get people the idea of the narrative. And that's where sort of format development and stuff is so underutilized by organizations. The brand guidelines and graphical manuals and stuff, they tend to work, like I said, in a negative way. They're gatekeepers. It's like, well, I have this idea of communication. It doesn't adhere to these guidelines. Sorry, you can't do it. And then you have the other ways, like, well, yeah, do whatever you want. And then it starts to look a bit crazy sometimes. But I'm sort of I'm like the ever optimist about this, because I don't think people want to communicate on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook like out of spite. I never think it comes from a bad place. I always think it comes from a good place. Like, I want to tell a story. I want this story to be better. I want it to be this and this and this. Like, yeah, well, let's get you more tools to do that. And those cannot only be like guardrails. They can't always be like, oh, sorry, can't tell that story because you don't have the right, shade of green.
Yeah.
Or you don't have the logo in the place to the correct amount of percentage from the canvas edge. So sorry.
Now you're making a lot of designers angry. But it's interesting because I fully agree that most of the time where I bounce is when people have told like a story that doesn't really jack into what we want to say. But still, I've seen a lot of discussions lately about how important the actual designed brand is on social media too. I saw, sorry for not remembering who it was, but it's someone who writes a lot about TikTok who showed off first a Swedish advertisement for home utility things, Clas Ohlson with the boxes and stuff. And throughout that ad, you couldn't see who it was. So it was like, is this IKEA? Is it just my ordinary shop where I can buy boxes and stuff? What is it? And then she showed another ad, quite like it, where you could see the brand colors. It was really branded, not in a way that was like, this is advertisement, but you just felt the brand design-wise. And this is also something that I know that Facebook has told me, or people at Facebook has told me, that on social media, you can't just hide the brand. You need to show it because there's so much information that we need these like visual connections that makes us know that this is Storykit. This is not some other video thingy all the time. So there's a sweet balance there between like just throw the brand out of the gates and or really adhere to the brand guidelines, which I think is really difficult.
Yeah, and I think I have a ton of opinions about this. This is what I've been
I want to
saying.
hear them all.
No, yeah,
or at
sure.
least the first two.
please cancel all your other meetings today.
Yeah.
No, but the thing is this: there is you can create like direct recognition from like frame one for something. Yeah. Sometimes it's a color, right? So you can have a color. There are brands that have a color. There's like, oh, I know what this is. I know it directly. I saw the color. That's them. Then there are others who do it sort of with how they like shoot video. They have a style. They have a storytelling thing that they do. IKEA is a good example. You mentioned Clas Ohlson. Two good examples. Clas Ohlson is very much a color, right? That light blue color. No one else. They own that color in Sweden. IKEA has a way of telling a story that has been almost like comically like over exaggerated in the last few years, but they have a story. If other big Swedish brands, I mean, you had H&M many years under as they did the exact same thing every time. White background, person, clothes. You knew, I mean, you could see it 1,000 feet away. It's like, that's an H&M ad. You didn't have to see the price or the logo. You knew what it was, right? So you can create these really sort of strong pockets of stuff. Typography is a thing that's really sort of communicates brand when you have it associated with a color or that you have sort of established out on the market. Because I have the fortunate or unfortunate situation where I actually know the typography of a lot of companies, and I know that a lot of them have the same typography, and there's a sort of the trends are very prevalent when it comes to typography. Okay, but the thing is, so you can create a lot of recognition by these different things. What sort of doesn't create brand recognition is the distance for the logo from the canvas edge, or exactly how many milliseconds it takes for a certain text to animate in, or stuff like that. Those are the things that just go people. They just pass people. No one has ever like, oh, brand X have a really strong animation curves on how they sort of animate solid objects into the video.
And they always have the logo 15 pixels from the right. Exactly.
I mean, they tried 17 and that just didn't look like, them. That's not where people are coming from. And this is especially true in this sort of very fragmented environment where you have a lot of different platforms that puts demands. You have to move stuff around and stuff. What you don't have to sort of compromise on is like, what typeface do you use? What colors do you use? And when you're in the sort of higher level of video production, then it's like, how do you shoot the film you shoot, right? How do you grade it? How do you do stuff? Tons of stuff that creates recognition. Does it equate with sort of efficiency and good results. I don't know. That's a different question. But of course, you can do that. But the thing is, it takes very little to create that thing in your head where you're like, well, this is Clas Ohlson. Yeah. Just flash that color and you would know it, right? And then you're set. Then you're sort of in that situation. So I mean, brand is super important, but it's not that hard. That's the thing, right? You have to establish there's what can happen is on the downside is like when you communicate from a brand and you make it look shitty. That's a problem, of course, but shit is always a problem. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's something you never should do. Where do you draw that line? I don't know. It has to be up to every organization to say that, well, now we're fine with posting GIFs. That's super on the brand for us. That's how we feel. Or, no, we don't do that. That's not us. Okay, sure. That's fine. But the thing is, communicating the brand, establishing the brand for something isn't really that hard. It doesn't take all of those things that people sometimes would have you believe that it takes. It's like, no, I can't let anyone else do this. So what you do instead, well, I mean, so what happens is that you sort of centralize the skill of creating something that is super on the guidelines, super on brand to very few people. And what you have created is not like a creative thing. You have created a gatekeeper, right? You have created a way to control the output, which inevitably means less output. Right. You've sort of throttled it down so hard, so it's very, very difficult to get something out there. So I mean, brand is important, but don't think it's that hard. Don't think it's that advanced, right?
No. And so what we see in within a lot of our customers and how they work, we've got organizations of different styles and sizes and everything, is that you truly might need a different approach at large organizations when it comes to video marketing. It might be a bit more laid back in the smaller ones, but when you're a really big org, you need to start still put stuff a bit in the boxes. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the thing is, it harks back to the thing I was talking about before. I mean, I really think you need to do it. And the reason you need to do it is because in a large organization, in this day and age, the sheer scale of the production that you need to do to be really efficient is just, you can't build a video department that big. And why can't you build a traditional video department that big? Because traditional video production does not scale, right? It has no scale advantages except for, well, maybe we don't need to have 20 expensive cameras. It's enough by 10 because the utilization is only 50% for them. But you still need people editing videos. You still need to do that. And that's labor intensive and it's manual work. And it's what you want to do for the most high end of the high end. 99% of what you should do or need to do from like a communications or marketing standpoint is not the high end, right? No. It can take things from the high end productions and use it and reuse it, sure. And you can make it available. But I think what you first of all need to do when you truly try to decentralize video production is that you need to talk about this void between what you can't do and what we are, and give people lots of examples of, well, here's the thing you can do. Here's the thing I did that you could like mimic and do the same. Here's a recruitment ad that I did and it worked really great. And it was just 20 seconds long and it just had great click-throughs for that. It's like, here's the blueprint for that. You just do it like this, right? Regardless of the tools, regardless of what. So you need to build up this discussion about the actual stories that you can use, right? So you need to have those banks of stories, because apart from that being a way to, control or affect or influence how stories are told throughout your organization, it also solves a much more basic need with a lot of marketers and sort of communicators. It's that I don't know how to tell this story. I don't know what story to tell, right? So you can have that, but that discussion I feel is very, very seldom had. It's like I haven't really. I mean, when working as a consultant, that was what consultants did. They took that upon themselves, and then we sat in our office, and then we did storytelling for customers, right? Yeah. So I think there has to be a lot more discussion of what are the stories that you can tell? And they don't have to be advanced or a lot of them. If you are a recruiter, if you are a marketer, I mean, there's a good few stories that can be told and that you sort of can standardize and just do. So I think that discussion needs to be in place as a part of that decentralization process.
And it also comes to control, I would say. I see so many large enterprises really hesitating. They want to build like a really efficient video team, but they're so afraid of landing in this and being like, whoa, what did they create? So it sounds a bit boring, but it seems like control is really important when you are trying to decentralize, especially video creation, but maybe all content creation when you are an established brand.
Control is, of course, super important, I think. And I think to a certain extent, I'm sort of not advocating free for all just because you have sort of your heart in the right place.
Just do anything.
Just do anything. No, of course. So I mean, of course, you have to sort of offer the tooling, and you have to keep a sort of a modicum of control. And that can be, I mean, control can be pretty far-fetched thing. You can have pretty severe limitations of what you can and can't do. But the thing is, if that doesn't gel with the stories that you tell as well, right? So it's like, well, I have these limitations, but here's also a ton of great stories that I can tell within those limitations.
Yeah.
If you don't have both those things in place, then you will probably run up to people like that. I can't do anything. It's not creative enough because I saw this really cool thing with unicorns and starbursts and stuff, and I can't do that. And now I can't tell my story. It's like, well, you probably can. I mean, you are probably trying to tell, in a sense, the wrong story then, because you haven't had a great idea. And I think you need to address it from both sides. And when you have stories, those sort of graphical guidelines or brand limitations, they won't feel that hard, right? Sure. Because you have getting stuff out there anyway, right? If you are a person who leaves work every day and feel like, shoot, I didn't get to spend enough time with like crafting the creative output and, you know, making cool effects in that video I'm working on and stuff, and you're actually measured on how many shoes you sell, then you should probably just switch careers, right, and become a videographer, because that venue is open for you. There's a line of work where you can, you know, work with animation curves and stuff every day. I'm not saying that you will succeed, but I mean, there is a line of work. If you're in it to sell shoes or get people to send money into your NGO, then you should probably be like, whoa, that was a great day. I didn't spend almost any time in crafting the message that I needed to actually do my job, right? So limitations can also speed up things, right? Less options can be a good thing, but
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, that's something that I follow an American marketer called Dave Garrett, who is always talking about guardrails. Not maybe especially for creative content, but for everything you do. Like, if I don't know which budget I have, it's very difficult to make my plan. If I don't know which colors to use, it's much more difficult to create on-brand things.
Yeah,
but
sure.
Do you have any tips on how to get started with video marketing at more established organizations? Because it's so easy to just, okay, we're going to hire that videographer and start from there.
I would start with, like, I would do that really, really annoying thing that when I was working at a custom publishing agency, it was like, well, we have to be able to make money by telling people not to publish things. We have to be able to make money by telling people, kill that communication channel off. Right. So I think you have to start from the basics, go like department by department, and ask like, so what are your communication needs? What do you need to get out? If you talk to HR, if you talk to like talent acquisition, it's probably going to be recruitment ads, right? If you talk to some kind of product marketers, it's going to probably be something about your products and the sort of life cycle of that. So I think, first of all, just make sure that you do that work, because then a lot of times, perhaps you won't find that your salespeople are doing, wildly different stories about brand or talent acquisition. So you won't find your sort of talent acquisition people creating content about the mission of the company and stuff like that. So I mean, I think start with the basics, like just get that on. So what's your best or major or most sort of relevant purpose to communicate about? In large organizations, one department will have a lot of different needs, right? Because they are, in a sense, big organizations within bigger organizations. But if you're like medium-sized, then certain departments are responsible for doing different things. And I would start there. I would start like, what do you guys need to do the actual work that you're put here to do? Then I would start investigating the kinds of narratives or the formats that you need to do that in a very, basic way. It's like, no, we have to find new people. Okay, what do we need to do to find new people? Well, we have to, first of all, tell them that we exist. We have to tell them something about ourselves. We have to sell our sort of story as an employer. We have to do this and this and this. And from that process, you will have lots of sort of subjects, or you can call them formats or narratives that you want to tell. So, I mean, I wouldn't go into sort of video production until much later, even if that's the premise for why you're doing this job, right? So yeah. I wouldn't.
It's still just a format. I mean,
it is. I mean, and a lot of times, I think we talk about this every time on these talks. It's like, well, sometimes it shouldn't be a video, right? There's always that option for it not to be a video. Yeah, that would have been really bad if you had made a video out of that to show that sort of
get that
image.
Point through. Yeah.
So that's the boring answer. It's like I would start with a very, very basic sort of analysis of what people need, and then move on and move up from there.
Yeah, super interesting. I have one last question for you before we're going to wrap this up. I think this is super interesting to hear your thoughts about this, because I mean, as a little spoiler, in Storykit we have lots of ways to make your brand look good in video. But whatever tool or process or whatever you're doing, do you have any ideas on like how can I make sure my brand looks good in video? What are the basics for doing that, regardless of which tool or thing you're using to create your video?
I mean, first of all, it's like if we disregard the basics of it, I mean, whatever tool or solution you use, you have like the right font and you have the right color and stuff, all those things that are really sort of on a visual level, and this super fast, like visual recognition thing makes it to be your brand. I think where if I were to wish, if I ran an organization, I would do this. Well, wait. No, but I would spend some time thinking about how we actually sort of create our assets. I would try to be on some level, and I will give you a few examples of what level that could be. On some level, I would try to create a kind of look for myself that sort of is the layer below. So and that can be super hard and super expensive, right? It's like, no, we need to have our own stock assets and they need to look like this. And we hire this team to just go around to every office we have and stuff, and it will look like this. That's kind of a tough ask because it costs a lot of money. For larger organizations, that should be a given. They should always do that. As soon as someone films something, that should go into like a centralized bank, and it should be treated in a way that makes it look on brand and sort of follows all the principles all the time, and then made available to the whole organization. But you can do that. That's sort of the super expensive way of making everything look good. It's like keep it to a controlled set of assets. Just use assets that look in a certain way. or use, basic color plates and stuff, so that you're always sort of very, very controlled in that sense. All the use of assets is one thing. Another way of doing that is like post-processing. It's like you could do that before it gets into a tool like Storykit. You can grade video, and you can, grade images, and you can make them look a certain way, and then you use them as is. A third, even cheaper and more easy way, is that you come up with a way of mimicking or creating that sort of brand look within a tool like Storykit. So, we always use this filter set to 48% opacity. And that's a look that we're using, and that way you can. I mean, we've talked about this a ton of times over the years. It's like you can create a coherent look by just using built-in tools and do the same thing on every asset that you put in the tool. Once again, regardless of the tool, that's a way to do it. It's like do the same thing with stuff, and then you will see that, well, that creates kind of a cool and consistent look. Yeah. You can go super heavy on those sort of filters and styling things, or you can go very light. Regardless of what it's like, it kind of normalizes everything to a certain look. Okay, so that's why. But the easiest way to make everything look good, I would say, is to back off a bit. Like use simpler. If in Storykit it would be like use simpler slide types. Use sort of less animation, rely more on when you have text over videos, is like rely more on the more simple animations. Perhaps don't introduce too many plates or objects and stuff like that. So just keep it very sort of simple, and let the viewer focus on the actual message. Because going a bit more low key is kind of a good way to ensure that you're not drawing outside lines too much. So I think there's in every situation, there's a solution to being more on brand or not outside the guidelines. Even if you don't have we have perfect on-brand assets that we use every time, or we have these, amazing tools set up that just automatically lets everything become super on the brand in every aspect of it. So there's a lot of ways to achieve something that looks more on brand, and it's a lot of times it tends to be like the quiet kid in the classroom a bit, right? If you don't make too much of a fuss, then people will tend to look at it like, well, that seems okay. That's well sorted. That's well mannered. That works.
Yeah. That's something we see a lot with every user, almost every user that comes on the Storykit, that the first couple of videos are like, wow, firecrackers, and every slide there is in the tool. And then after a while, you just realize that this is starting to get in the way of my messaging, and it doesn't look on brand, and people start slimming down, which is a nice development to see when they're really starting to trust the storytelling instead.
Exactly like that. It's like with almost every tool that you use, or whatever.
First you do it all.
Every toy. Yeah, exactly. First you use everything, and then you just use what's really necessary. And so it's an evolution that I think a lot of people need to go through as well. But from an organizational standpoint, or like a brand guideline or whatever, making the brand look good, that's a good development. Yeah. You don't need that much. I've been discussing this question throughout the Storykits. So it's like, do we know of a brand where the sort of the brand recognition lies in their animations, like in the patterns with how things are moving? And so far I've come up with like, no. I mean, I can name tons of brands that have like with how they film stuff and sort of like that. But I can't really see one that is like, well, like I said in the beginning, it's like, that box moves into the screen in a certain way that I just know it's Tysco. It's like, it doesn't really do it.
Please let us know if you know a brand so we can prove
it
Fredrik wrong.
would be really cool if there ever was one that was like they don't do text, they don't do anything, they just like animate circles and boxes onto a screen. And it's like, oh, that's totally Pepsi. I mean, they could because they have graphical objects in their logo, but it's like, no, just a square box. Show it on the screen and I'll tell you what brand it is. There's probably some cork sniffer out there that knows exactly how that works. It's like when people are hearing differences in audio cables. It's like, well, I know what brand of cable that is. It's like, oh, I know that animation. That's from the X, Y, and Z brand. It's like, sure. But most people, no.
Most people wouldn't. We're going to wrap this up. So thank you, everyone who's been with us. And thank you, Fredrik, for bringing your wisdom into the conversation once again.
I do this only to say that I do this only because you will tell me that it's wisdom.
Yeah. We'll be doing these bi-weekly, so every second Thursday until Christmas. So please sign up for the rest of the exciting Story Talks live webinar, shows, circuses. That's a very long name. That's short than that.
Story Talk. That's a cool name.
Story Talks.
That's what we should have gone with.
Oh, anyways, thank you very much and have a nice day, everyone. Nice day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.